Hello,
Hello.
how are you today?
Oh, yeah. Eclipse, full moon. Heightened, magnified, about to burst. That's how I'm feeling. Right on the tip. It always
Yes.
happens when I get heady as well on full moon. Like I am feeling that I'm just at the tip. I'm just about to. Yeah, I can't take it anymore kind of feeling.
Can't take it anymore. What, everything? Life?
Well, just like energy, it builds and it builds. And it's like, all right, okay, it's time for the descent now.
Well, you want to release, you mean?
Burst.
You want to explode.
Yeah, like the volcano. That's what I'm feeling like today. Volatile.
Come on then, let's explode your volcano.
Oh, I've got
Ejaculate.
oh,
Yeah.
a cosmic orgasm.
hmm
That's actually really what they are, full moons.
Cosmic orgasms.
Yeah.
Yeah, the building of the tension and then the release. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Hmm.
The fullness and then it just. Poof.
Yeah, I'm feeling like maybe I just need to relax into it.
Let it go.
Just
Mm.
know that it's that time. Know that because sometimes things come up, and especially because it's an eclipse, to really feel. And sometimes when I have things planned, I forget that, when we have these things that are planned and we're not taking time to kind of honor that process, because that's actually what we're being asked to do by the greater energy and cycle and nature. So it's good to kind of find time in your day to just be conscious of that. So also you don't kind of act from a place of which I think happens a lot, with moon cycles. And people go crazy on the full moon. That's what they always said, but it's not crazy. It's not being intentional and not really understanding the energy and what to do with it and how to be with it. So yeah, I feel like as we're kind of building to all these portals, the 14th with another eclipse and then the solstice on the 21st, it's like boom, 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 boom. It literally is like going through the birth canal. That's a kind of vision that I had the other night about this energy. And then you're out on the 21st, the new light and the birth and so this is kind of.
Well, it's the death canal as well, isn't it? Because it's the dying year. Everything's going. It's simultaneously,
Yeah.
which I suppose is kind of like the full moon being an eclipse. It's this paradox because it's the full moon, but then it's going to be dark. So it's like the new moon and the full moon together
Yeah.
in one thing. And in a way, the end of the year in the northern hemisphere, which is where we are, this is the end of the year now. This November moving into December, when the seasons kind of autumn's changing into winter and the days are short, uh, leading up to the shortest day and the sort of turning of the circle around solstice. Everything is kind of dying and dropping off. Leaves are falling, and well, they've fallen now. Mostly, it's just this kind of rotting and dying of all the old growth from last year in preparation for the sort of sleep of winter.
There's a real piece to the starkness.
Yeah, it's very peaceful.
It's a skeleton
Yeah, it is. It's yeah, it's interesting when you say that about the moon. It's one of those things that it's often dismissed by our kind of scientific, rational culture.
Yeah.
All that stuff is dismissed as kind of hippie woo-woo stuff. But it's so obvious that the moon, which has a profound influence on the earth, in as much as it causes the tides every day, that in combination with the sun, they move all the water on the earth around every single day.
Mhm.
Women and all animals, I guess, have evolved to
Yeah.
be in tune with the lunar cycle. We're all in tune with the lunar cycle, whether we know
Mm.
it or not. Of course
Mm.
we are. How could we not be? It's one of those things that's hidden in plain sight. It's so obvious that we've somehow managed to convince ourselves that those things aren't important, but they're there influencing us in a very sublime way.
Mm.
Um, so it seems to me like it's wise to kind of make use of
Mm.
those cycles, even if you're not consciously feeling any influence from the full moon. It would be wise, in my opinion, to kind of construct your life to make use of seasons and lunar cycles and solar cycles, because then you're more aligned with your environment.
Mm.
And we always talk about, and there are people that say it's good to kind of launch things or seek help or go out into the world and try and get things moving leading up to a full moon, because that's the energy. It's this rising energy. And
Mm.
then new moon is very much a quiet,
Mm.
collecting of oneself. It's a bit like the solar cycle condensed into a month,
Mm.
where you've got midsummer, the
Mhm.
height of the sun's
Mhm.
power, and then you've got midwinter where it's at its weakest.
Mhm.
And in a way, the lunar cycle's a bit like that. You could have every month can be a kind of mini year where you're coming out, rising up, putting your energy into something, and then taking stock, bringing it back in, regrouping, ready for the next cycle.
Mm.
And I do feel that
Mm.
there's a kind of hidden, not hidden, but it's a sort of way you can enhance what you're doing in your day-to-day life by making use of these energies, these cosmic energies, these massive influences that the sun and the moon and the planets, we're surrounded by these enormous forces moving around, and
Mm.
they have a profound influence on us.
Mm.
So it's good to kind of weave that in to everyday life, which of course is what people did for thousands of years.
Mm.
But it wasn't until science and Christianity in the West where we started just putting everything in one bag and calling it superstition,
Mm.
tying a knot in it, throwing it out the window.
Mm.
But that's madness.
Along with a lot of women burnt.
Well, yeah, exactly. All of that, all those great ideas we've had.
What of that? Controlling.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it was the mind. It's the rational mind, isn't it? And it's the left hemisphere of the brain as well. That kind of control,
mm.
precise. It is, and it is a masculine energy, I suppose, but it's masculine out of balance.
Mm.
It's when you take away the feminine or suppress it
Mm.
and just have pure masculine. It can't, it doesn't work. You can't have half a wheel and expect it to
So
roll.
funny. I mean, it's not. It's only funny because it's ridiculous. And when you're talking about having the year cycle in a month, that's exactly what we experience as women, which I would say it's easier for us. It's not because we haven't been taught about it, but now we're kind of reclaiming all this wisdom of what our ancestors were doing and how they were living and tracking our menstrual cycle in that way as well. it's exciting because it's sort of it's easier for us because we have that tracking device, whereas with men, I don't know what that's like because you don't have that.
Well, this is fascinating you say that, because of course men must have a lunar cycle because they've evolved on Earth just like women have. So there will be energies moving, and I wonder how it relates to the reproductive system in the male body, whether there is a kind of tide of sperm production or fertility, or you know what I mean? Because there must be some influence.
Yeah.
Of course there is. How could
But
there
you
not
can't
be?
just be like standing there going,
Yeah,
I
you're not
don't
wearing
trust
a
it.
foil
I'm
suit and you're
fine.
protected from the energy of the moon.
My cells are doing nothing right now.
So I wonder, I mean, that's a fascinating
That's interesting.
proposition anyway, isn't it? Like
Should look into that as well.
yeah, what I wonder if anyone's done any, there you go, there's a PhD for someone to discover the lunar influence on the male reproductive system.
Yeah. That's really fascinating because obviously what we have been doing has been this deep kind of healing and reclamation of the feminine because it's been so suppressed for such a long time. But also what's coming up parallel to that is this healing of the masculine from a new place. It's like, okay, we have been using the masculine energy, but that's not it in its essence, divine essence, when it's healthy. So what's interesting about this kind of feminine leading the masculine, I feel like there's new insight for men as well as we're coming up, as we're doing the work and kind of leading the way. There will be new insights for men as well, and I feel like that's kind of exciting for deep diving into a way in which the masculine can work alongside the powerful feminine again, and how we can both be empowered as well, internally in our masculine and feminine, and externally in our relationships, and each of us finding our power centers, and how to really work with ourselves instead of against. And yeah, I feel there's been so much healing that's happened, even in my lifetime, which has been short, 29 years. Things have changed so dramatically, actually, because even when I was coming onto my period, there was nothing that was talking about how you look after yourself and even tuning in. I mean, obviously there must have been, but like a small group of people who were kind of aware of it, but I wasn't told, okay, this is how it affects you, this is how you can kind of work with it. It was kind of, here you go, have a pill and get over it kind of thing. Like, just
Yeah, seen like a medical problem, a bit like childbirth is in the West. It seems it's seen as a medical problem rather than this kind of profound, part of life, which is interesting.
Thankfully, I mean, because of the way that I am, I said no to that because I'm, in touch with my body. And I just had that intuition of absolutely not am I putting that shit in my body. No. Mm-mm. It's like a rejected. No.
You're talking about birth control, right?
Yeah, birth control.
Because what it has an effect on your period where it reduces the intensity. Is that what you're saying? Is that
It's not good for you. It's not good to be repressing, suppressing, controlling your cycle. I mean, the amount of friends that I've had who just went on it and have been on it for like 8 years, and they, have experienced massive mood swings and also disconnection from their body. That's the main thing that I've noticed, the common theme of well, yeah, I just popped it and that was kind of it. And when we're doing this with kind of blindly just putting in these almost kind of plugs into our system, we completely stop our connection to them. And yeah, it's really all a trail, these things. And it's coming unstuck from that and realizing that there's a greater wisdom that's always available to us, and that we can get back into sync and flow with that. Because there's been a lot of unhealthy women, and it totally imbalances your hormones. There's just so much. I mean, we know about taking pills for anything, it's not good for us. We know that, I know that, having come from taking a lot of stuff and then now not taking anything, and how highly attuned and wise my body is, and it tells me exactly what it wants and needs, and
Yeah,
I don't take anything.
this is a massive subject which could be interesting to get into.
We're on the tip of it, but I'm kind of not diving deep because, yeah, drugs.
Well, I want to clarify or kind of add a little bit to what you're saying, because you're saying you don't take pills or any of that kind of thing. I think just to sort of balance it, there probably are situations where pharmaceutical drugs are an appropriate response to a situation. But I would say that that's probably a very, very small percentage of the conditions that people are taking drugs for. I think it's more a function of a combination of perhaps a very masculine medical system, which wants to fix problems by going in and doing something and looking at specific things and thinking, if I can change that, it'll be fine, instead of seeing it as this holistic system that has many factors that are contributing to this ill health. And it's the whole system that needs to be treated, not the specific. It's a combination of that masculine Western medical science-based system that we've arrived at, which, from this reductionist perspective where you separate the world into all these tiny little bits and then you work on each one, that married with the pressures of profit making, from corporate pharmaceutical companies, that's basically our healthcare system. And we've got this emerging what's called alternative healthcare, which seeks to bring in these more holistic, energy-based, subtle methods, and wellness-based rather than illness-based, wellness-based, where the focus is on maintaining, promoting, bringing about wellness rather than treating disease and illness, which is a very different attitude and approach. And I think we're seeing the beginning of the end of this medical system. And maybe this is its kind of full moon completion, crowning moment, where it looks like they're going to try and vaccinate the entire planet for the first time in history, which terrifies me, that this rushed through vaccine that's being pushed by a huge corporation whose motive is profit before anything else. Whatever anyone thinks, it's a profit-making machine. And it looks like politically we're going to be coerced into taking it, because if we don't, we might not be able to travel or go to work, or your children may not be able to go to school. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm seeing on the edges now being discussed. I saw something yesterday about how an airline company in America was going to insist that you had some kind of passport that said you'd had the vaccine before you could fly on a plane. This is terrifying to me, utterly terrifying. This total faith in the pharmaceutical approach to medicine.
Mm.
So we may well be at the kind of the full moon moment of
Mm.
Western medicine as we've known it, in the past however many 100 years.
And it's just gone mad, hasn't it? And gone, okay, let's do the most extreme thing that we possibly can just to hold on. It's like, let's try and control everyone immediately now, because we can sense that there's massive change, and we can't cope with this. So let's just inject everyone and we'll be okay.
Yeah,
And
it is. It's like the ultimate expression of control, isn't it? It's like
is.
the world is so chaotic, and we thought that science and this kind of rational approach to life would solve all the problems, and it's not. It's always getting away from us, always escaping, because the world just simply is more complex than that. It can't be controlled, understood, contained in that simplified version of, or that simple way of dealing with it. And
Like,
maybe this is the ultimate expression of that. I hope so, because I just want us to break through, because as we know in our direct experience, there is a whole other world of wellness waiting for us on the other side of that. And really the question, or what's being asked, I feel, is we're being asked to find a way to harmonize again this masculine and feminine energy, this control and acceptance. Like, how do we bring them into balance so that we can have an appropriate amount of each, which is what the cycle of life needs, which is what you've got to have, this harmonious relationship. It's all about bringing everything back into harmony, male, female, heart, body, mind, spirit, all these different elements which are so out of balance, ecosystems which are out of balance because of some of the practices we've had. It does feel like it's a time of harmony and healing and expansion and liberation of overcoming the old fears. Because it's usually fear that is at the root of all this stuff. Or power, the need for power. But the need for power, I think, is founded on fear as well.
oh yeah.
Why do you need power over everyone else and everything if you're not afraid of everything, or it's beyond your control? Sorry, I went huge there. Sorry.
No, but it's right. It's right, because what I was going to say is the choice sits with us now as well. It's got to that peak of where we've been looking to someone else to give us all the directions, and they've gone nuts, and they've actually shown us, what their focus and what their intention is, which is to control in mass. Before it was just like kind of, woven into the system and the way that we were doing it, but there was space for people to do their other stuff, so it didn't seem so extreme. And now it's just come to this peak, and it's this this point of choice, that we've come to, which is like, we also have to choose for ourselves. We have voice, we have power, and it's also showing up and saying no to these things. That's how I feel, and that's why community and gathering and minds together and kind of collective work is so important, because we actually do have power, and it's about remembering that. And I feel like that's basically what this time is about, is remembering that we each individually have power, and that we're sovereign, and that we can choose. And with that choice, there comes energy, there comes a frequency that helps to harmonize, as we were talking about frequency last week. It's about the harmonization and the balance of our planet on that very energetic level as well. So when we're actually choosing, we're giving an energy of like the yes energy, the here energy, the present kind of energy that's not lower vibrational and fear based, which is what we've been living from that place. So it's also about stepping into a new frequency, which changes everything anyway, because we're all energy. So there's one way of thinking, like emotionally and in the physical and the human way, and then there's the energetic way. So it's like all of us is being asked to kind of step up, really, with our choice, with our energy, with our intention, with our focus, with what we want to see actually manifesting. Because again, it's where we focus our intention, and attention is what the outcome is going to look like. So it's kind of, for me, I feel it's all go, like with all that we are, all that we have within us, to shift this, and to remember that it's like we can all get into the pieces of the puzzle. We can all choose to get into our right position so that we can all fit together. And if we're stuck in fear, we're over here on the outside of the puzzle, kind of going, no, I don't want to, or, not even consciously doing that, but it's like all coming together to just fit and play our roles. And that's kind of a huge next level bit of the conversation about soul mission and soul purpose, and like who we are, and finding that out individually so that we can kind of step up into that as well and play our roles. And there's just so much that we're on the edge of.
Yeah, what's interesting is where these two worlds are going to collide, or are even colliding now. This clash, because there's all this you're talking about, and then there is this machine and these institutions which are, so established and so pernicious and influential and controlling, and married with the technological changes we've seen in recent decades, their ability to control is stronger and stronger now, because everything, the more digitized your life is, the more you're at the mercy of those that control, the gateway, the service providers, and the infrastructure behind the internet, and the regulators who control what those companies can and can't do, the intelligence agencies, and the financial institutions that have massive influence over all these systems are now directly controlling your life in a way that they couldn't have done 200 years ago. I mean, there were different restrictions then, social ones or just kind of material ones. But it's this clash between that machine, which does organize and organize and organize for kind of greater control, not even that it's malicious, that it's just built into the way the system works, because it's rational. So it rationalizes life, which means controlling it. It's ultimately anti-human, because humans are messy and chaotic as well as rational, but they're both. Whereas the systems that have evolved are purely rational, and they're anti-human in that sense. And so there is this incredible moment in history where the machine has never been more powerful than it is now, and could, through surveillance and control of your finances and propaganda and misinformation in the social media universe, it can completely manipulate populations more effectively than it could ever do before. And it's no longer restricted to individual states or nations. It's global, through the internet. But at the same time, there is this kind of renaissance in personal discovery in the internal universe, and a lot of these ancient traditions from the East, where humanity really went deep into finding out what we are, what the nature of reality and the universe is. That's spread through technology too. You know, got in through the back door through the dissemination of information, and now has changed and influenced the West profoundly in my lifetime, and has given birth to new forms of exploration into this place. And you know, when you talk about energy, it could be quite interesting to go into that more, your experience of what that is, because for a lot of people they may just think what's she talking about, you know, because it's not the conventional view of the world. It just sounds like made up new age bullshit to a lot of people, because they've been trained in a very rational Western Orthodox education system. So, and are suspicious of anything like that because it's not logical. You can't scientifically demonstrate some of those things because they're subjective experiences. But it is emerging, this subtle energy awareness, these kind of expanded levels of consciousness are, it seems to me, becoming more prevalent in the population. And you know, that's where my faith is, because that's all about expansiveness, about acceptance, about going to the dark places. You know, it's including everything. Nothing is off limits, nothing is wrong or bad. It's just what it is, and it's about assimilating that. So to me, that does feel like the right move for humanity, to head towards that. And it does feel like that's more the light, and this control and domination and technological whatever it is, this technologicalization of culture seems to be a darker energy. But I'm not dismissing it because it's powerful. These are
I think it's
powerful
the
tools.
intention. I really think it's teaching us. All these things kind of come to teach us, and it's just, I feel before we change, there has to be that peak. Again, it's like the full moon. It's like you've got to peak before there's
Complete.
the completion. Yeah, and we're really, there's so much going on with that. And I do think technology has come through to teach us as a intelligence to further our evolution. But right now we're in that struggle phase of the old way of doing it before the new way comes. It's like each, you know, we've seen this happen over years and years and years. It cycles again. And I feel like we forget that sometimes, or we're in fear about that. We're in denial about that. That's part of the process of being human. And I think an acceptance is really important to start cultivating in your own life as well, to deal with this stuff. Because when you're just taking it on or you're not, it's kind of like, again, it's that too much. It's too linear. It's like, I'm either going to take this all on and I need to know everything, or I don't want to know anything. It's like coming again back into that balance of looking to new information and old wisdom and kind of getting curious. I think that's the first thing that I would suggest to people who are interested in this or thinking, what is she talking about? Because it's all individual as well. It's like, I'm not here to try and kind of change people's minds, but if it's not working, there's another solution, there's another perspective. So getting curious about that and starting to do your own research and open up, I think that's a really good way to start understanding these things that we're talking about, because you know, these have just been our experiences in our life, and we're all gonna, you know, find out different things, but it's just being open-minded as well. That's what I think, you know, with these other ways or alternative ways of talking about life is keeping open to it and not shutting down anymore, because shutting down has got us to where we are now. And this is where communication is really important, and having conversations like we're doing. Conversation is about, you know, different perspectives and not one person having to be right and to prove the other person wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like we can sit, you know, we can start kind of exploring that individually in our lives. Like, what am I curious about? And, you know, finding out more about it, and not again waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And getting, yeah, getting curious and interested in what's going on in the world. Kind of the first step, isn't it? And that's, you kind of follow trail after that.
Yeah, that brings up for me this idea of this monopoly of opinion, like only experts or kind of
Yeah,
talking heads
yeah,
um, know the truth or something like that, which of course is absurd, because one, the truth is constantly evolving and changing. And I think, to me, this is what's exciting about this new space that seems to be opening in terms of long form conversations like this one, where instead of turning up having already known everything you were going to say, and you have this set of opinions and ideas, and you're sure that this is how it is, and you're just presenting that to the world, you know, which is
politics, isn't it?
it,
That's what you
it,
call
it
it. Politics. It's a
well,
political.
yeah, it's like dead on arrival. It's like a stillbirth,
Yeah,
because conversation is a creative act.
yeah,
It's about finding out who you are, finding out who the other person is, and creating things. And to me, it seems like explorations of ideas and subjects where there's no authority, there's no, you can have some authority because you've got experience and you know things work and you can share that, but no authority is complete or absolute.
yeah,
There's always room for it to be improved or changed. And because the system of life that we live in is always changing, the truth is always changing. It's a relative thing. It's relative to time and place, situation, context. So this idea of getting away from that need to have it all simplified in a soundbite, which is ridiculous, which is why now the mainstream media is completely obsolete, because it just presents what you were saying, this thing of, you know, somebody has one opinion, somebody has the other, they're opposite, they each say their thing, nothing is really discussed, nothing is created, and that's supposed to be how you get your information to base your life on. It's ridiculous because it doesn't relate to your life. It's childish, you know, it's stupid. And you can't discuss complex ideas in 3 minutes. You can't discuss complex ideas in 3 weeks. It's about exploring and going deep, and this is a wonderful opportunity, this technology we do have, which allows us to have a conversation like this. For all these incredible podcasts which we're now seeing gaining strength, because that's where you go for information if you want considered information, and information that's not complete, that's always leaving the door open for something else to come in and inform it. It's so important that we do, you know, for me, a motivation to do this is that I just want more of us to be having conversations and talking about difficult subjects without fear, without having to be politically correct, or you know, any virtue signaling or any of those things because you're afraid of what will happen. Just to honestly, with an open heart, discuss things, and to be wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to say stupid things, because we're only saying things based on our experience or what we've heard, or and none of us have the complete view. So, you know, also I'd like a bit more forgiveness in people's
Ah,
kind of receiving of what people are saying, allowing for people to get it wrong or to be misinformed, but being open to hear,
mm,
you know, to really hear people's truths rather than just holding on to your opinion and waiting for your moment to speak and not listening to anything they're saying, just knowing that it's not the same as yours. And you have to fight it because you have to beat it because you're terrified that if your opinion is wrong, then somehow you don't exist or you're not important or you're not worthy or whatever it is that makes you hold on to that little piece of certainty, you know, that's so woven into your ego that,
mm.
you know, if somebody challenges it, it's not that they're challenging your idea, it's like they're challenging your right to exist.
Ah.
And that's how it feels, you know.
Gosh, I
So
just remember it so well, throughout our relationship and how much that shifted for me of holding on to something and going, no, this is me. It's when you associate and you become your you attach yourself to your beliefs in that way.
mm,
That you literally are attached to them, that when you say them it's like you're leaving your body with the thing that you're saying, and then if someone says no, you go what, because that's all of you that's just
mhm,
taken that kind of.
mhm,
It's really interesting to visually picture how that used to be for me, of when, let's say, you were saying something and then I was immediately feeling into that I disagreed and what my opinion was. It was that full body disagreement. And then my full body to go, this is what I think. It's just exhausting. I mean, think it like when you visualize that as a way in which people are interacting every day from that place of fear, it's like, oh, just let go. And you see it in people's faces, you see it in their eyes. I mean, we've talked about this for years, meeting people who are just full of fear, and you just see it in their body. And it's not a nice way to live.
yeah, it is. It's exhausting. It's like a physical fight, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just like you're saying, this is my hand, you know, look, this is my hand. And the other person's saying, no, that's not your hand. Your hand is this. And it's like they've cut your hand off. Or they're saying, or they're saying, no, that's no good. And it's like your bit of you is being, they're saying it's no good. So you're not any good. You know, that bit of you is no good. And if that's not any good and the other thing's not any good, then a huge part of you is not right.
Mm.
You know, and it's perceived like an attack. It's like it, yeah, it's just a different perspective, isn't it? And this is interesting because I'm not being quite clear, but a lot of it is to do with values. So we have this value, everybody has a kind of set of values that define their reality,
Mm.
that is right and wrong and how it is and what's
Beliefs.
important and what isn't. And this is what you see in traditional left right politics or anywhere where people are disagreeing strongly.
Mm.
Um, it's that two different views of reality are being presented, and you know, one side can't understand how the other side can't see that they're right, because of course that's how it is, because that is their reality.
Mm.
And neither of them see that they're both presenting two different realities and they're arguing for the truth of them both. Neither of them see that they're both true, they're just different places.
Mm.
So you're always thinking naively that something you can say or some clever combination of words will allow them to finally see in
Oh
their
my God, you are so
stupidity.
right. In that moment, I had clear clarity. I just felt that everything you were saying was true.
Yeah, but see, but of course that would never happen because you would have to contradict your entire reality. So left and right wing can never agree because it's not a question of logic or rationality or that there is this absolute truth that one person is seeing more clearly than the other. No, truth is relative. Values are relative to who you are, your culture, where you're at in your own development, where your culture is at in its development. And this is the source of that conflict. And and so whenever you hear the opposing view, they are opposing your entire existence. They are opposing your entire way of life, what's true, what's good, what's right. And that's how it feels. And that's why it's so passionately expressed, and why people get so upset, and ultimately why people will commit horrendous atrocities and acts against other humans, because it feels like the very foundation of their existence is under attack. So until you can reach a perspective where you see that it's just different value sets kind of rubbing up against each other, it's impossible to kind of reach any sort of harmonious conclusion. And you just go into this sort of extreme one way or the other, which is kind of what our political system has been. Is that one side dominates and then it gets pushed back, and they rarely kind of break through that, or they haven't broken through it so far, because they've not yet reached that place collectively where they can see, we all, and we all have these in ourselves as well. That's the other thing, that we all have the left and the right, and the masculine and feminine, and these things, they exist within us. And sometimes it's a kind of it's those shadow parts and suppressed parts of ourselves which we're seeing in that other political party, and vice versa. I'm kind of wandering a bit there, but
that was very clear. That was good, because that's normally how our conversations work. I just go blah 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 with my intuitive feeling thing, and then you just rationally kind of explain it. I when you were talking about all of that, I was thinking about the children coming through and kind of being like, it's all right, we don't have to know everything, because the next generations are coming through that are so powerful. And it's as if we also need to learn how to be in cycles within, generations, within our family, within, who's coming now, and to learn to listen to that new energy, that new light as well. Because I think you get to a certain point in your life and then you kind of have to know everything, but there's this, there's always this energy that's coming. Children are coming, the new generations are coming, there's always new energy coming. And I think, having looked and observed all the children that have, been born, since we've been together in Norfolk, I'm just seeing the kind of amazing characters and who they are, and just even the babies looking like, wow, those babies look ancient, they look old. And actually just being reminded that there is this consistent flow of life happening and new energy coming in. And I feel like that's really important as well, to stay open to the younger generations. Now, as I'm turning into nearly 30, I'm not the younger generation anymore. I'm thinking like that. I'm like, well, okay, don't get stuck in I'm young, I'm the young. There are always the younger generations coming in, and listening to them, because that's who will be shifting, who will be leading the way, actually.
Well, again, that's one of those great dichotomies that needs to be balanced. You've got the wise, like the truly wise elders, say, in a kind of ideal community, who have had life experience, have absorbed the teachings of the past, have put that all together, you know, and from a place of goodness in their heart and out of a sense of service, because they've gone through their stages of life and now they're ready to give for the good of the whole in harmony with the wider world. You've got that whole wisdom. And then you've got the children who are the bringers of now, and they know the now better than the elders do. They understand the context that we're living in of the times, and the elders understand the context within history and the relations and connections with the ancestors and looking forward to the future. And that combination, if you can harmonize those two energies and each can recognize the good in the other and see that we need tradition and, you know, stability and, you know, a more conservative, perhaps right-leaning view from the elders, which holds on to what's been achieved and, you know, means we can sustain. But then you also need this kind of radical energy of the youth to just break through something that doesn't work anymore, to push. But either one of those things on their own is deadly. You know, too much wisdom, control, tradition is just the death of a culture. Everything gets squashed and it pushes the breath out. Too much kind of innovation, radical, dismissing, destroying the past. It doesn't sustain. It's like a firework. It explodes and then there's nothing left. So you've got to have this harmony between the two and this recognition. And there is a kind of, it is a sort of wrestling match, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it should be a struggle and a bit of a fight. And, you know, one side should push something and then be resisted, and the other side should push and be resisted. And, you know, between them, somewhere in the middle is this kind of ideal, healthy place that, you know, that we're kind of orbiting around that middle all the time, ideally, where we're kind of pushing and pulling, but we're always maintaining this kind of sweet spot where life can thrive within that. That's so important.
It is, and it's coming back to community as well, isn't it? And how we can kind of help one another. And that's why community living and tribal living is so powerful, because we have all the perspectives. We have the elders, we have, you know, the parents, we have the children, we have the, you know, everyone, the aunts, the uncles, all of the wisdom of what people can offer and what they've experienced in one place. And that's where we get a really rounded view of life as well, which is what excites me, because I feel that's the way we harmonize, as we have a rounded view and that we include everyone.
To add into that, you just said at the end, to include everyone. The danger with a community is if it's a community of people all like you, that's going to be fatal. I don't mean you, I mean like one.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. but it's that, because, and this is the trap in a way, this is what happens in social media, is that you become siloed with everyone who's like you and thinks the same way, and it's totally deadly, because real community is a bunch of people who are all different, and there'll be people that you can't stand, that you just can't stand, you've got nothing you want from them. But it's so vital that you're exposed to that, because it tests you, it tests your limits, it maybe provokes some of your deepest, most buried parts that need to be, you know, atoned or need to be assimilated and you kind of made peace with. So it's vital for the health of a culture and a community that you have the full range of people, and that somehow, you know, you find a way to allow people to be who they are in difference, and to live in that different and contradictory and sometimes conflicting way. But it's essential. And the moment you start removing those people, sending them to the gulag, the concentration camp, deplatforming them, shutting them down, all of those things that we're seeing, those deadly, deadly things that are creeping into social media now, where people are being censored and shut down because they're not agreeing with some generalized idea of what's acceptable. That's the beginning of the end. That leads to the gulag. That leads to all the horrors we've seen. That leads to the concentration camp. On the right, with fascism, the concentration camp. On the left, with Stalinism or Maoism or the terror after the French Revolution, that leads that way. They both lead to hell, those roads. And we're really seeing that at the moment.
Yeah,
we're being shown the two hells we could choose from if we don't find a way to expand and contain everybody in a healthy dialogue.
Yeah, and welcome the shadow. You just talked about the shadow, and if we're each integrating our shadows, we're not going to have that polarity or that kind of I hate you thing. It just doesn't happen because we're all mirrors of one another. So when we're doing the work and we can appreciate the people for being themselves because they're actually showing us something in ourselves that needs healing, that's when community is really powerful, and we can get, actually deeper into relationship with people who are not like us. It doesn't have to say that we don't get on with them. There's a way in which we can actually use that not getting on with them for our own healing and progression. And that's really exciting if you can find people courageous enough to show up and be like, great, let's just see what happens, and let's bring presence to every moment. Let's actually see what's going on in every moment, not like I'm just going to hide. You kind of have to be up for it as well, and that is challenging. I mean, that's what we've been doing in our relationship. I feel like you get really strong. It's like you keep going round by round, like boxing. You just keep going, and I feel like that is very powerful, and that's what we're seeing is the shadow is playing out right now on a huge global scale, and it's whether we look at the shadow and we accept it and we start integrating it in ourselves, or we don't. But I feel like people are doing it. I know there's a lot of shadow work being done, and the more that we kind of talk about it as a subject, the more that people start to get curious about what that is, and not just burying these emotions that you think are ugly or unattractive about yourself, and working with them and realizing that they're part of you, because when we're suppressing them, they still are there, and they actually run our lives when we're suppressing them. And if we can look at those things that we fear or that we feel are unattractive about ourselves, and we can welcome them in, we become more whole again. It's all about this wholeness, isn't it? It's all about this balance of understanding the ways in which all of this is playing out in the opposing sides. There are always two sides of everything, the light, the dark, internally and what we're seeing externally. And it's exciting to kind of open up to, if we're healing that within ourselves, that will heal within the greater, within the reality, because our reality is a reflection of us. So if we can go in and look at those dark shadows about what we don't like about ourselves and start to work on them, then we will see it externally changing in the physical. And that's really powerful, and that's where we do have the power to do that individually in our lives to help the collective. And that's an exciting journey. It's very challenging, but it's colorful, and each time you show up to feeling those feelings that you don't want to feel or you've suppressed, the more you actually open and the more that you become centered and strong, and the more that that energy moves and the more powerful you are. It's like allowing that electricity to actually flow through you. Your light bulb becomes brighter and brighter the more that you actually let that flow. Yeah, so we do have the power within ourselves individually to change, and that is exciting, to feel like you know there's something that you can do to help. Because I think, you know, when we're looking at the outer way and going, oh, how are we going to do all of this, and how are we going to like change it, and what's going on, and it always comes back to self and what can you do in your own life to support your healing and wholeness and fulfillment, and that's going to help externally.
Yeah, and these dark parts, which my understanding is, and it may be wildly inaccurate, but my understanding is that when you're a child, you're just this new person who's got no inhibitions about who you are or what you're expressing in the world. And as you're growing up in whatever context, your family or community, you're being socialized consciously and unconsciously by those around you and by what you can and can't do, which is deemed acceptable or causes pain or trouble or trauma or whatever else. So you're expressing these things all the time, and eventually over years of childhood, all those parts of yourself that were not desired by the people around you for whatever reasons, good or bad, get pushed away, get suppressed, get buried. And that's what I refer to when I talk about shadow. And what seems to happen is, as we mature, those energies, those expressions of ourself, if they're not somehow reintegrated in a healthy way, if they're not allowed to exist and be expressed, but in a way that's not destructive or socially kind of corrosive, then they can become a source of immense energy and strength. Like some of your greatest allies may be those shadow parts of yourself. And, you know, if you're a kind of left-leaning individual in our society, all those things you hate about Donald Trump, there could be big parts of yourself, little Trumps in you that you're denying. You know, some people, maybe there's a part of you that just goes out and gets what they want and gets it done, that you could really use at times in a healthy way, if you could somehow assimilate that energy instead of projecting all that suppressed energy into hatred of this person because they represent something that is abhorrent to you. And, you know, yeah, they may be doing terrible things, of course, but they also are fundamentally representing some archetypal form that you perhaps repressed in yourself. And that, you know, we all do that. We all do that. And you do it, there's a kind of golden shadow, isn't there, where somebody you really admire, that it's almost painful, your admiration for that person, because again, they're showing you some part of yourself which has maybe not been allowed to flower or express itself. So, you know, when you're watching Bob Dylan singing and performing in such a profoundly powerful and deep way, it's because there's a bit of you that has that urge to express and master a craft in that way. Or so it's this wonderful kind of opportunity, this exploration of these parts of ourselves. If we go into that place, there really is gold, you know, like all these kind of mythologies and stories tell us. When you do go on the hero's journey and you face the demons in the darkest places, that's where the treasure is.
Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings.
That's where, you know, if you go and face Smaug the dragon in The Hobbit, he's sitting on the pile of treasure. It couldn't be more obvious. but he's the biggest demon you're going to face.
Mm.
And it's that wonderful kind of invitation. There it is. We've all got that gold in us, all of us. And it's profoundly powerful and helpful. And, you know, you don't have to go and do it all in one go. You can just do little journeys, little adventures to find it. But something that came up when you were talking, I just had a thought, this whole thing of duality, because all the great traditions kind of teach us that ultimately, you know, all roads lead to oneness, and there's only this kind of one energy. But it seems to me that duality is purely a product of our biology. We have two hemispheres in our brain, left and right, you know, like left and right in politics. We have masculine and feminine. All these dualities, it seems to me, the reason why we think there are dualities, or we seem to experience them, is that we have, in part, these two hemispheres in the brain that create reality. And they have very different views of reality. One seems to be very pointed, like an arrowhead, and it focuses on things. And the other seems to be like an owl's vision. It's this kind of all-round, you know, field of awareness, rather than this precise, focused attention. And that dance between the two, I just wonder, it was just the thought that came up, like maybe that's why we have this perception of duality, because really everything seems to be more of a spectrum. Because you say, well, there's day and night. Yeah, but when is day and not night? They're always becoming night. Day is always becoming night. Night is always becoming day. Yin and yang. You know, the wave builds, the wave drops. The full moon, the moon is always becoming full. Then it's becoming a new moon. Where's the point? You know, where so it's kind of illusory. But anyway, that was a little cul-de-sac I wanted to go down.
It is. I was just getting excited about Lord of the Rings because I just find these stories so clear. Like, let's everyone just read Lord of the Rings at this time, and you will like get what you need to hear from it, because those stories are so ancient, and it's what we have been moving through, you know, for generations. It's kind of finding ourselves. And when you really do go on that journey, you do find yourself. Because, you know, some people don't choose to do that, and that's fine. And whatever it is that they're doing. But if you really do want to find a sense of fulfillment and find your mission and find your purpose and find, you know, your truth, going on that journey is there. That's an option.
Well,
And
it's not even an option, really. You can refuse it, but it's actually, being a human being is about that journey. And there are ways to avoid going on the journey. But, you know, the reason why all the stories, or the reason why we even have story, or we're moved and interested in story or film or books or any of those things, is because it's how we understand the complexity of being a human being. And all of these archetypal characters and situations have touch us because they relate directly to what it is to be a human being, and it always has been the case. And that's why all the mythologies you find throughout the world, in their richness and diversity, all have archetypal similarities, because they're all talking about what it is to be human. And they're all guides for how to live as an individual or as a collective, or how to relate to the greater than self thing, the mystery, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. They're just guidelines for living. And that's why they're always relevant, and they always touch us. And all great storytellers know this. They know that you take those archetypal characters, you send them on a journey. It's as timeless as humans, you know, as long as there's been human consciousness, there's been stories. And story is the most potent way of communicating these wisdoms. And it's what we did for thousands of years before we wrote anything down, was we sat around the fire, which kind of mesmerized us, which is why we love television, because it's a flickering image. Television is just the fire in the 20, or the, you know, video, movies, whatever. That's just the fire. So you sit around the fire, you're looking at these shapes and these forms flickering, and you're hearing this incredible story. And the story you're hearing is different. You could tell the same story for 50 years, and at every point in your life, you'll take a different thing from that story, because the story is so multi-layered, so rich, that it contains lessons for you at any different point in your life. And that's where the great stories of the world, how they arose. They arose from the wise elders kind of processing, and the artists within the community processing what it was to be alive, and what it was to relate to the divine, and what it was to be a community, and to relate to your environment. And they mixed all of that together in this rich tapestry, and found this incredible way of teaching it to the entire community, and reminding, endlessly reminding, because we're so forgetful, us how to be human, how to be human, how to live, how to be good, how to do this, how to face difficulties, how to be together, how to relate, how to understand what the universe means, or give us some meaning, you know, a foundation for being alive. It's so deep within us. It's wonderful.
So rich. And we see all aspects of self through characters, through every character. That's what's so powerful, is that everyone is an aspect of you. And when you can take that into watching a film or reading a book, that's really exciting. It opens a lot of new perspectives, because, you know, we have our favorites of the film or our favorites in the book, and we're like, oh, we don't really like that one. And it's like, that one that you don't like is still a part of you. And so it's really interesting to look and to absorb and to kind of reflect on story and film in that
They're
way.
the ones, look at the characters you really love and identify with, and look at the characters you really hate. They can tell you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Ones you're indifferent to at this time in your life, or maybe never, they're not for you, but they will be for somebody else. But that's it. You know, we all do that. We all identify with particular characters in the story, or we prefer certain films or certain stories because we just have this deep resonance, because they're living out our experience, our journey. You know, they're showing us it in another form. You know, it can either show us where we're going or what we need to do, or it can validate something that you know is true and good and right about yourself, or it can kind of make you feel a bit uncomfortable with that bit of yourself that you know you haven't quite dealt with yet, and you know, trying to push it back down into the cellar, but it keeps kind of trying to get out. Yeah.
I feel like I'm at the tip.
Maybe that's it. We've reached
Volcano now. My head. I'm like, right, get into the body again now. This is what I do after every conversation I have to get down back into the body, back into the heart.
Well, it's easy, isn't it, when we're talking to go up into the head? It is for me anyway. It's good to remind periodically to just feel the feet, or yeah. I don't. We're quite practiced in heart listening now, I think. So that's less of an issue.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we do too much ranting from the head.
No, I think
but the body is we should always be remembering.
also letting go at the end of something. And then we go, and okay, well, that was that. Not holding on to that as the process of what's each of
Shake it
done.
out.
Again, it's a practice in not getting attached to something and going, well, right, that's now how I think, or that's now how I'm going to take my kind of perspective into the day, or now I'm going to just go from that place. It's about checking in, going, okay, that was great. We just did that. And now I'm open again. It's kind of resetting. That's what I do anyway. It's about resetting throughout the day so that we're not just unconsciously kind of taking all these things along with us. It's really important to remember that every moment is new.
Good.
Good.
That was then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, goodbye.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
and full moon blessings, and let's see what happens. Bye-bye.
Bye.